Hello. All right. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to jump right into it with the test. I'm going to go over a few that I if I'm not quite sure, if I don't feel pretty confident that I had not lectured about it or that it could not be gleaned from your argumentative assignments and a few from the textbook, then I want to make sure we're on the same page and we have it. All right. So let's see here. Like I said, so I'm going to give you the opportunity afterwards to ask me other specific questions that I did not cover, but I'm just subjectively using my own criteria right now in that way. Okay, so I feel as if 1 through 3 were covered in a combination of lecture and assignments. But again, when I'm done, you could ask me any of those three, and I'll be happy to go over it with you. Number 4, I'm not sure if I did. Okay, look at option B. The instructor subjectively claimed that that U.S. naval technology was lopsidedly superior, and that is absolutely true. You look at the Battle of Manila, in which the beautiful city and buildings of that capital of the Philippines were greatly damaged and endangered further had it not been for the rather quick surrender of that capital city. And such was the arrogance of the Americans that when they came into that bay, they were playing ragtime music, as tantamount to like in the 90s in Kuwait, when our guys were like playing rock and roll or rap music in their tanks, rolling into town. So that was that type of haughtiness that we had coming in. A guy named Cervera, Cervera, he kind of foolishly kept all of his naval squadron in Santiago Bay in Cuba. And then of all days, on the 4th of July, he tries to run through our blockade around the bay. And we just took them out one by one. Their ships, it was no contest. It was kind of sad. So B is the one that's correct on that. Notice the high morale amongst the Puerto Rican Filipino people. No, I tried to suggest the opposite, that they didn't necessarily ask for our help, as many of the Cuban leaders had against Spain. And I definitely did not say that the African-American Buffalo Soldiers, that their military contributions were inconsequential. All right. I think 5 is pretty clear in a handout. And as I spoke about, but remember, I did call him on one of the numbers a puzzle, an enigma, right? And I would take a look at B again, or C, and that he often seemed reluctant to intervene and grudgingly beholden to popular demand for manliness. Remember, that's Hoganson's thesis, that he had to appear macho if he wanted to be reelected, but also curiously ambitious and making demands upon Spain that were likely impossible, and a growing interest in Puerto Rico and the Philippines. So those are all true. I believe I mentioned, but I may not have in lecture, that Walter Lefebvre, I recommended his books. He is very revisionist in his history. He suggests that American greed, the big business lobby power, etc., were oftentimes fundamentally behind most of our government's decisions, etc. All right. And then number 7, absolutely. What I have here is he was depicted as a mini example or microcosm, right, or embodiment of America's the power of ideas. Remember the dangerous ideas in section number 1, social Darwinism and all that. Absolutely, he adhered to them. He was Secretary of State several times over. America's increasing willingness to engage in aggressive geopolitics, absolutely, according to those ideas that he held to, but also his connection with big business, right? So to me, this person known as James G. Blaine, who was fundamentally a part of a lot of the diplomatic decisions that were made with foreign countries and us becoming aggressive, it's kind of great man history, right? Continuing that he had a big impact on it. And I think he embodies at least those 3 points. All right. Brinkmanship. Well, number 8, I never brought up that term in class, but with brinkmanship, right? It's when you pretty much extort other countries geopolitically for your own country's self-interest. And so you try to offer them something at first, and if they don't take that deal, you quickly threaten them with something, right? And you have to be willing for them to have the chance of calling your bluff and actually going to war over what you're trying to acquire. And so they call that brinkmanship, right? Being willing to go to the brink of war. Taft was oftentimes depicted as the antithesis, the opposite of that. An arrogant expression used connected to his presidency was dollar diplomacy, saying we don't need to have official colonization of Latin America. We just need the almighty dollar to run their countries. So number 8 is false. All right, I feel good about 9 and 10, but like I said, you can come back and ask me about that. I mentioned 11, 12 for sure now, starting with the progressives, what they fought for, yes. 14, yes, court history. 15, yes, revisionist history. 16 is a particular numbered section, number like 4, second to last section in that progressive assignment. 17, I think I mentioned, but just in case, 17, progressives, they use new sciences like sociology to study and combat systemic poverty and marginalization. That's absolutely true. All right, the settlement house movement, we went over that. Number 19, just in case, I'll do that one. Which of the following is false regarding Theodore Roosevelt as a self-proclaimed progressive president? Richard Hofstadter, the historian, claims that Roosevelt embraced the progressive movement as a manly chivalric knight's errand. Absolutely. That is true. Roosevelt took a self-proclaimed impartial father figure role amidst labor strife, as seen in the Pennsylvania coal strike. Absolutely. The expression he used was square deal, said he gave both sides a square deal. It was one of the first times that a president actively got involved in a big labor union strike and like dictated terms to both sides as like a father type figure. Roosevelt's administration publicly attacked, quote, bad or, quote, misbehaving trusts, some believing to give cathartic satisfaction to the public. And I did, I think, mention that. That is true. Roosevelt supported socialized medicine, transportation, and education. No, he was not that far to the left. That one is the one that does not fit. All right. As a progressive, Woodrow Wilson, did his administration break up more trust than any other president? No. It's ironic, right? But in that early 1900s, the administration that broke up the most trust was the administration that did not even call itself progressive, and that was William Howard Taft's administration. And he did not implement the first peacetime minimum wage laws in all industries. That's almost a trick question, the second part, because those who received labor contracts in World War I, they did have to adhere to a minimum wage law policy and other policies and fair treatment of their workers, but certainly not all industries. All right, causes of World War I went over those with you, as well as 22, the official reason for declaring war in World War I. Him being a Whig Anglophile, that's number 1 on the Wilson assignment. And number 24 is found in the last section of the Wilson assignment. And you'll find that the Committee on Public Information was not depicted as being congruent or parallel with his what he preached, with his rhetoric. Carl Schenk's case is very briefly mentioned in that last section as well. Secured and broadened First Amendment rights during wartime? No. It curtailed them. It cut them short, right? It was the, the whole thing, the whole reason that to this day, right, that you can't yell bomb on an airplane or fire in a theater, etc. If your words and expression create an atmosphere of clear and present danger, you cannot articulate them. Okay. 26 is found in the last section, as is 27 as the thesis of the last section. 28 may not have gone over that as far as the basic experience of the doughboys. I hear two different interpretations. I've read two different interpretations from two pretty respectable historians. So maybe it's both explanations. I don't know. But one explanation, just kind of a little on the side here, is that they're already at that time were calling cash dough, and Americans came with cash, and the French were all too happy in trying to exploit that and offer them goods and services, etc., to strip them of that cash or that dough. And then they also wore their blankets rolled up like dough on the top of their backpacks. And so for whatever reason, they started calling the Americans over there doughboys. Black American soldiers often received a taste of better treatment when fighting with the French. That is sadly true. Absolutely. Okay. Conservative, progressive regulations against immorality and drunkenness stifled the soldiers' experience. I would say that's false. We tried as key members of leaders of the armed forces and cabinet members and a progressive president in Wilson. They tried to keep our boys away from alcohol and prostitutes in particular, but it just didn't work. The common perception and interpretation is that they lost their innocence in France. C, friction arose concerning French leadership over American soldiers. Absolutely. The two leaders over the doughboys were Foch, F-O-C-H, Ferdinand Foch, and a guy named Petain, P-E-T-A-I-N. And there was a lot of anger and resentment that they were able to tell the American soldiers where to go, where to fight, where to die, etc. And so, yeah, we had some of our leaders fight vigorously against that, but somewhat to no avail. Friction arose between American officers and regulars. Absolutely. And I won't get into, this is test day, not World War I day, but yeah, there were various reasons for that. One of which was with the progressive administration of Wilson's, they thought so highly of education, right? That as they drafted people, those still in the numerical minority who had received a college education were, as they were drafted, were automatically made officers with no military experience at times whatsoever. And so there was resentment over that there was a sense of, lack of skill, lack of experience and knowledge from their leaders. Also, their leaders were known to kind of flaunt the progressive moral crusades and, drink and cavort with women, etc., but not allow their soldiers to. So there was a sense of kind of hypocrisy as well. And then you also had the fact that there were still, as I think I mentioned, one of the reasons for the brutality of World War I were that you still had very aggressive, old school tactics that were utilized now with new, much deadlier weaponry. And that was a bad combination. So there was a sense that a lot of officers were just sending their boys to their deaths. Right now, matter of fact, they have done a new take on Netflix of All Quiet on the Western Front. And should you watch it, I've already seen it twice. You have to keep that in mind, that they are trying to convey, critiques of war, and of that war in particular, that elicit within you, anti-war sentiment. And so it's not meant to be to make you feel good at the end of the movie. I'll just tell you that. So let's see here. American numbers alone may have helped influence the Germans to surrender in 1918. Yes, we have evidence of that. The two main guys in charge were Ludendorff and Hindenburg in Germany, and we have evidence from both of them mentioning American numbers as kind of a reason to consider surrendering. A lot of the fighting at the end was in the Mu-Argonne, Meuse, is the name of the river, and then the Argonne, Argonne, forest. That was a pivotal area by the end of the war, and we had 1.5 million doughboys ready to fight, like fresh and ready to fight at the end of the war. So our numbers did count. All right. Which of the following is false regarding Wilson's 14 points? It involved what some presently label as multilateral liberal enforcement. Yes, that is true. Articles 10 and 231 went against the spirit of Wilson's message and plan for the post-war world. I wasn't sure that I was going to put that just yet, because of course that's part of the interpretation of World War II to come. So instead of explaining those right now on a test day, I'm just going to let you know that that is true as well for now. Okay, if you don't mind, and I'll save the details for our World War II class coming very soon. C, Wilson lived up to his rhetoric about self-determination and evacuated the Philippines. No, that is the one that's false. Although, to his credit, he put the Philippines on a, quote, timeline, a chronological timeline to eventually acquire independence. Number 30, the thing is, I want you to know the general facts, but again, this is test day, and that's an omission. Sometimes I just really miss something on the study guide the day of my lecture. Because our World War I, my lecture was pretty long, but I forgot about this. This actually is true. Okay, he had Mexico invaded twice. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible because I do want you to know this. All right, is for one, right? He kind of adhered to to Teddy, as much as he fought with Teddy Roosevelt and tried to claim he was so different, right, from Roosevelt as his rival. He kind of adhered to Teddy Roosevelt's his corollary, his addition to the Monroe Doctrine, that the Latin American countries needed to, quote, behave. They needed to be economically sound, and when they borrowed money from other countries, and they needed to be politically responsible, right, and not have upheavals and stuff like that. So at any rate, I remember reading with number 1 of the Wilson handout. He was a Whig, right? He was for liberalism, increasingly democratic government, increasingly open capitalism in the economy, individual autonomy to choose what he or she wants to do, etc. Right? And so Mexico began its revolution, and they chased out a 30-year dictator in Porfirio Diaz. And then there were several factions that were fighting it out for control, right? 2 or 3 in the north of Mexico, 2 or 3 in the south. And the guy in charge of the guy who momentarily takes over is Madero, Francisco Madero, Madero, and he was right up Wilson's alley. He wanted elections, he wanted democratic government, liberalism, etc. Right? So it sounded all great, but the guy in charge of his military, of Madero's military, before he could have his elections for the Mexican people, turned against him, and his name was Huerta, Huerta. And so Wilson being the northern neighbor, that was just inexcusable. So he wrote, like, he sent like telegrams immediately to Huerta and said, release Madero and have elections. Let the Mexican people decide whom they want to rule over them. Well, instead, Huerta had Madero executed. And so Wilson around the White House began calling Huerta the butcher. And so then there was an episode with our Navy, and they ran out of coal at Tampico, on the coast of Mexico. And when they came in, they were roughed up, they were arrested. Some of them were tortured and interrogated. And Wilson just flipped a switch, and he sent Marines into Veracruz. And on another reason is there was something also with Mexico was defaulting on paying back our lenders. So he said he's going to teach Huerta a lesson. He's going to just go into Veracruz. He's going to take control of the customs duties of their import and export tax revenue to get America's money back, but also stay there in Veracruz until Huerta had elections for the rest of the country. Well, the Mexican people at Veracruz fought back, and they killed, like, I want to say like 16 American Marines, and the Marines killed almost 300 Mexican citizens coming into that city. And Wilson was just, he instantly regretted what he did. And so he pulled our guys out. And then the other one was Pancho Villa, right? What Wilson was doing is, because he didn't know the future and he could not predict who was going to win this Mexican Revolution, he was betting on more than one horse, metaphorically, right, in the race. And so he was giving money to a guy named Carranza in the north, as well as to Pancho Villa in the north. And he may have been giving someone money down in the south, I don't remember, of Mexico. But he was, like I said, simultaneously assisting multiple people. And it came down to the wire, right, where it was kind of like with Rome civil wars between their consuls, right, where they had four, two in the east, two in the west of the Roman Empire, and one won the battle in the east, the other one won the battle in the west, and then the eastern and western winners fought each other. That's what happened with Mexico, but it was north and south. The northern guys fought one another to one man, the southern to one man, right, and so forth. So at any rate, it's coming down to the wire, and Wilson feels the necessity of choosing just one horse to bet on. And he put his money on Carranza. And he not only put his money on him, but he did just that. He gave Carranza money, and which gave him more weaponry and more mercenary fighters, etc. Right? And Carranza in turn beat Pancho Villa in a key battle in the northern deserts of Mexico. Well, Pancho Villa was a passionate guy, could be warm as can be, but boy, could he be vindictive as well. And he was furious, and he felt betrayed by the U.S. and by Wilson. So he went up to the border of Columbus, New Mexico, and tried to attack our fort to take on the soldiers there. And this time, American citizens at Columbus, New Mexico, came out to fight against these Mexican intruders, and they killed a handful of American, like 21 American civilians were killed by Pancho Villa and his men, and they fled back across the border. And so Woodrow Wilson sent the Marines under Pershing to find Pancho Villa. And it was all over the newspapers. It was the news for a long time. They went everywhere. And it was like, Afghanistan. The terrain of northern Mexico was just virtually impossible to find him. And he was beloved by his people with his origin stories and so forth that I don't have time to get into. So at any rate, Woodrow Wilson, Mr. Self-Determination for all countries, right? That's one of the many ironies of him and his reign, as he invaded our southern neighbor, Mexico, twice. Okay. All right, 31, we certainly did, I believe. '32. Note option B. Look at B, okay? Did I say that most women became economically independent? No, I didn't go that far, right? According to books, it costs between $22 to $25 a week to live. And a lot of the women, young women that were employed, were making between $18 and $21 a week. So the data suggests that they did not quite become economically self-sufficient during the 20s. All right. The Volstead Act, the 18th to 20th Amendments, right, pertaining to prohibition. How did I depict that? Well, I did not depict it as a smashing success, right? And I definitely did not say that it diminished or made smaller racial tensions. All right. The Harlem Renaissance. Look at option C. In case I didn't mention that, Harlem itself did not grow into a multicultural, modern, culturally avant-garde, socioeconomically white-collar city. No, they tried, but it didn't seem to happen. Okay, 35. I spoke of Josephine Baker, Langston Hughes and Count Colin, and the whole identity crisis. I spoke about that. The Scopes trial. I mentioned that, right? And how they didn't stick to the facts on the teaching of dark exospecies evolution in public schools. And then, to be honest, 38 to 40, I would have to look up and find them again myself. I don't have them memorized because it's not a matter of memorizing the facts. It's a matter of interpretation, right? As to what Brinkley included or did not include in his interpretation of these topics. And so I couldn't even tell you offhand what they are, but hopefully you have your textbook and just use an open textbook in answering those last three questions. Okay. So those are the ones that I felt, that it was incumbent upon me to mention today, because I may not have on those topic days. Anybody else have any specific questions? Excuse me. So please remember also that this is you should be able to take all the time you need once you begin the test. I sure as heck would never choose a default option of limiting your time. I'm very, very much philosophically against that. All right. I'd love my students to take as much time as they need to take it, but you just get one go at it. Okay. So remember that as you're submitting your answers. All right. So are there any others that I didn't go over today that you're questioning, you're wondering if you could find out of the handout, you don't recall from my lectures, etc.?
I don't have any questions, sir.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. Anybody else? Okay, you guys. So good luck on this, okay? I hope I helped you a little bit. Yeah, I feel better in the sense that I feel like the ones that I did not go over are pretty self-explanatory from the combination of either what I've already spoken about, or what you could clearly still find in your argumentative handouts. All right, so good luck, okay? All right. Bye, you guys.
Bye, sir.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.